And welcome back, everyone. This is the Refresh Point. My name is Ben, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Steve. How's it going?
You know, been a very busy week, but looking forward to talking some Weiss.
Yeah, and you know what? As it turns out, the last Springfest that we talked about was not the last Springfest that we were ever going to talk about. Surprise, surprise. So we will be discussing some more Springfests after we were ourselves done playing in them. And also talk about the Waifu format and how you might mess around with it and how we're about to be messing around with it in about a week or so. So, shuffle your decks, tap or cut, and we'll get right into the Refresh Point with some breaking news. It's very little today. There's not much. yeah, we're falling into that summer dead zone where we're just not gonna. Things are gonna start to separate out a little bit, but they did hit us with a new release date. We're getting Azure Lane! Yay! The boat hose, the trash boats coming in to pollute the ocean.
Yeah, so we get a October release date for Azure Lane.
We're gonna skip maybe one or two regionals with that, and then they'll come crashing in.
Yeah, pretty exciting set for a lot of players. It's a big set.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, I think what I like about it is nothing feels too unreasonable. It's kind of similar to like Hololive in that regard, where you could see a lot of configurations coming out of a set of that size.
Right, exactly. And there is no more news. There's no other news. So we're gonna get right back to spiking. It's the spike corner.
We just can't seem to stay out of it.
We can't seem to stop hopping in. We're gonna get on back to the spike corner with the results from Rosemont, Madrid, and Mexico City. Oh my god. Alice is here. It's everywhere! Help! Ah!
Yeah, you better get used to seeing that deck, because if Rosemont is any indication, it's just gonna be crammed down our throat for the foreseeable future.
It's so funny that it was in seven out of the top 8 teams, but not the winning one. Like one team rose above. They're like, no, we won't play it.
Yeah, and it's funny because if you look at the actual team position, that Kaguya deck, which was basically constructed to defeat Alice and has extremely good matchups against it.
Yeah.
Many of the Alices were in that position.
Yeah.
And so I guess grats on that. But
congratulations on fighting a blonde-haired Integrity Knight many times over.
But yeah, 6 out of the top 8 were playing the Alice Silica. Very little variation.
I think one played Argo.
No. The only other SAO deck in the top 8 that wasn't Alice Silica was 8-bar Mito.
Oh, right. Yes.
Which is a little bit dark horse, a little bit under the radar, a very good 1 combo paired with a very interesting 3 combo, which we can talk about. But of these other 6 decks, after looking at them, I mean, we're talking about 5 cards of difference between 6 basically nearly identical builds.
Yeah.
So the good news is you're gonna know exactly what's in this deck every time you face it. The bad news is if you don't have a good answer for it, it's pretty tough.
Yeah. You know, I know we were talking about it. It's like how much can you just ignore Alice, and the answer tends to be how much can you keep refilling your hand after losing it to Alice every turn?
Yeah, I think it's less that. I think most high tier meta decks at this point, it certainly doesn't feel like they can run out of cards. Right. They just have gratuitous amounts of plussing, and it comes from such a variety of sources that it does feel difficult to completely get drained. But it's more the fact that the SAO player, every time Alice lives, and every time they get to jam the choice again, you're getting just exponential amounts of value.
Right.
So it's definitely a problem for the meta. How much so remains to be seen. What I kind of, before we talk about Alice much further, I want to say, looking at the top 8 or what we know about the top 8 for Mexico City, this looks like the most fun meta ever.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a wild top 8.
Yeah.
They just run everything.
Link Strike.
Yeah.
Is that good? What else we got here?
It's got Fate.
Yeah.
It's got anti-spirals. It's got...
You gotta get rid of Alice somehow.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of the brute force, like, pull the emergency lever button. But,
if they hit you to level 2, then you just play it, and then they're all gone.
Yeah, Pants, Wind, Slime?
Yeah.
Two different 8-choice Dals. Just a absolute smorgasbord of Dark Horse decks. A Kaguya standby deck. So, yeah, I mean, we're seeing the best of the previous meta and the current meta and even some metas that never really existed in the first place. So, I wish maybe next season we'll prioritize going to Mexico because...
Yeah, you want to go to Mexico, Steve?
Because this looks...
I guess we could road trip.
It looks It looks absolutely wild. I mean, people are just playing whatever the fuck they feel like. So.
I mean, hey, we're in the Americas. We can call the worlds from Mexico. We can go.
Yeah. So
seems good.
And then with Madrid, kind of a smaller, similar to France, where you have kind of a smaller turnout, so you get some highly variant results. Coming out of it, and a lot of decks that probably were, you know, they were stronger in the meta before, but they're still good now. But a lot of high roll in the top 4. You've got you know, lots of Escanor, lots of dual laners, very explosive builds. So, you know, that's to be expected in smaller events, I would say. But yeah, you know, kind of walking back around to Rosemont, the team that won, obviously they knew what the meta was going to be like. They knew that everybody was going to be playing Alice, so they put a Kaguya deck into their team that is highly effective against Alice.
Yeah. And they played Slime Pants Book, and the name of the deck I think is very apt, which is Too Smooth Brain to Play Escanor.
Yeah. It's
I agree. You know, having piloted that deck for like a year and a half or like 2 years or whatever in my first few regionals, props to you. You're so true. You're spitting. You don't have to think that much. It's just put the cards into memory and then block. And then count how many more cards in the deck to refresh into a new compressed deck and put more cards into memory. You're so true for that.
Yeah. No Nino, no Escanor, no Alice. Just a good understanding of the meta and 3 decks that are very good into it. We've got we've got a standard compression deck with Slime that people have been piloting and doing well with, so it's not like it came out of nowhere. Dal 8 standby. The type of deck that has a lot of favored matchups in the meta. It does have the restrict on its finisher, but if you can manage to keep the game in range, then you're good to go. And
it turns out they've found a way.
Yeah, it's a combination of off finishers. You know, you've got the Icy Tail, you've got the Twins 3/2, and then really it's just jamming the Realizer into every Dal deck. Because the Realizer is very difficult for some decks to manage. Escanor hates the Realizer, so yeah. And Alice...
Souls be gone.
Yeah, and if Alice has any defined weakness or defining weakness, it's the kind of the mehness of their finishers.
Right.
You know, Silica is a fine finisher, but it's unlikely if you are not level 3 that you're gonna die. It just doesn't have that much damage.
Yeah, I know. I think I sympathize with there was somebody on Twitter. Unfortunately, I forgot who it was, but they were at Rosemont and they were saying, I feel like every time that I had to clutch it out with silica, it failed me.
Yeah.
And you can understand why. It's like, it's just Marine, but different.
It's an expensive, slightly better outcomes Marine because you're shuffling cards back into their deck, hypothetically, right? You're making the math better. But at the end of the day, it's 6 packets, and as long as you block the 3s and take the 2s, then you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, if you manage to get past the Alice's, the rest of the mid game is kind of meh.
Oh yeah. No, I was playing, so, all you Kobayashi gamers out there playing 8-bar, I don't understand how the 1/1 Ululu works still. There was one in Top Cut somewhere, I think it was Rosemont, where it's a yellow 1/1 that on play to a full field pays for itself from waiting room, and then it's just an 8/5 and you can buff it. And I guess people have just been using that to kill Alice, but man, I like this 2 Slayer from Kobayashi that says no backup. That's really been my goat in like local playtesting. Of just like, oh hey, let me go transform some of these cards. Here, just donk one of those Alices, maybe donk 2 of those Alices, and res my number 1 combo, and where are they now? What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I think the attractiveness of the other 1/1 is that it's free.
Oh yeah.
If you get the full board cast.
It's like I feel like it's a cycling thing, right? Because it helps. It has both the power, and because you're playing 8-bar, it helps you cycle your blind stock very effectively.
Yeah, exactly. There's also the 2/1 that sends to memory when it reverses.
Oh yeah, that's great too.
So this Kobayashi's got a bunch of good tools to deal with Alice. So I mean, maybe you'll see that slotted in somewhere in the future.
Maybe people are just coping with a Lulu. Maybe all the Alices they fight don't just permanently have a backup in hand, and I'm the one that's coping. But man, a 2 Slayer that says no backup into that combo feels really potent.
Yeah, and we might see greater adaptations going forward.
Oh, for sure.
But I think ultimately the signal from Rosemont is going to be that if
Alice is here.
Yeah, and if you can't fight it, just whatever deck you're bringing needs to be able to at least feel reasonable into it. It doesn't have to feel favored necessarily, but it certainly needs to feel okay. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for a bad day at the tournament. So the only other SAO deck in top 8 was the 8-bar Mito. We can talk about that briefly. The Mito 1-0 combo would see a lot more play if Alice just didn't exist. It's very similar to the Itsuki combo, where you pitch a card, you look at 3, and then you just take them all.
Yeah.
The body is slightly worse. It's a 105k, and it doesn't have Itsuki's S ability, so probably harder to get over with that. 6k is pretty tiny for.
But hey, man, hand advantage.
Yeah. I mean, drawing 3 cards is never gonna be. You're never gonna turn that down, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's tiny, it's at least tiny and producing shit tons of hand. So there's that. The 3-2 combo is reminiscent of some older SAO tech, where you switch it in and out with a Asuna, and the Asuna makes it where the Mito you can't play backups. So you've got this like 5-attack switch thing that's going on, which is fine. It also, on play burns 1.
Oh.
So as long as you have an Asuna, and the Asuna can free cast a level 3 when you put it on board.
Yeah.
So
right. I can see this.
It's a lot of packets. You got 5 autos plus 2 burns probably. So
Seems good.
if you have 2 Mitos and an Asuna, which seems like probably all you'd be able to have. I haven't played the deck personally, so I don't know. But it feels sort of reasonable. You do have a bar support in green for Anniversary that lets you draw and ditch. But it's one of those, when it attacks, it gives it to all your characters type support. It's not like a back row support. So you do have some ways to manage the bar triggers. You do have a decently reasonable finisher. And green has got a lot of good answers for the meta. You do get a 2/1 that gets 6k against level 3s, and they can't play backups. So it will remove many early play problems that are level 3. They get a 2 Slayer that is 12k base, so that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
It's 13k with combo, so they need the special backup if they want to get over. If Alice wants to get over, they need the 3k backup, which you're gonna probably see more and more in the coming months as decks start to gain more power at level 1. You'll see Alice decks move away from the memory counter and move towards the 3k counter, because, or at the very least split them, because the numbers will start to work out better for them in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, very reasonable deck. Has lots of ways to gain advantage and a reasonable finisher. So yeah, congrats to the person playing that. They got 4th. Very good showing with a highly underrated build.
Another fun list that I wanted to take a look at was something that you're actually intimately familiar with. I seem to recall you thinking that after Alice came out, Okayu Sora was dead. And here we are. There's 2 of them. They're like the carbon copies of your list, maybe a few cards different. It's here.
Yeah.
It's performing.
I think that what's good about Okayu Sora Marine in the context of Alice is Sora gets... It's hard for them to get back over. The strength of Alice is on defense. The weakness of Alice is on offense. So what Sora can do is either get over, or if she's afraid you can't get over, right? You can just side 3 times for 1. Because what are they gonna do? It's minus souls on the follow-up turn. And they can't get over your 13k. So I don't know what they do. It's either run it in and lose your whole board,
yeah,
or I'll just repeat ad nauseum on the follow-up turns.
You started a cult, man. There's some followers out there. They're following in your footsteps.
Yeah, and I do see some adjustments that I don't hate. So yeah, I mean the team that got first at Mexico City was running it. So
I know.
Yeah, I mean,
it's your time. It's the list is calling to you.
Yeah, I definitely think it's still reasonable. I think minus souls is one of those things that if you can keep it on the board at level 2, it'll still be a good way to win, as long as you have a way to finish them. I don't think vanillaing for 4 is a strategy that is going to win a lot of games. But which is what kind of deters me from playing Rushia, is
right.
that you got nothing behind that. It's just a bunch of autos and hoping they die. So, but as long as you have a finisher to follow up the minus souls with, I think it's completely reasonable.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I mean, speaking of vanillas, last episode I discussed a Karuko list, and I was playing it the other night, and I went through the trouble of setting up triple Karuko for them to die to 3 vanilla swings, and I was like, well, they died.
Yeah. I mean, we take every win we can get.
We take all victories that we can get on the board, for sure.
Yeah. So, the Kaguya build that won Rosemont, we can talk about that briefly because it's highly different from what's been played from Kaguya in the past, probably. And it kind of has a different approach than most decks have in games. So, Typically, a Weiss deck is structured with some kind of advantage combo early and then some kind of damage combo late that wins the game.
Right.
Normally, the advantage is very straightforward. It lets you draw cards. It lets you check for cards. It lets you salvage cards or search cards. Or it puts specific cards directly into your hand. This Kaguya combo doesn't do any of those things. So, it's attached to a brainstorm, so it's very similar to Elizabeth in that regard, only it's much less direct. So Elizabeth is like, mill a card, salvage a card. So, very, very straightforward, just puts a card in your hand. Kaguya puts a Shuuchin character from your waiting room into your stock. So
money.
Yeah, we get 2 cash for free every turn. What does that mean? Well, we need to translate that into something.
Well, it's on a brainstorm.
Right. So
you get that.
First thing, we could brainstorm for it, right? So if we could brainstorm, we could use our free money to brainstorm.
Right.
That's good because we don't have very good deck mobility. So we will probably need to do that on a frequent basis.
And the brainstorm does check 3.
It does. So very similar to the strategy that is used by STS, where they have a free brainstorm. Theirs requires killing a guy. Yours is free because you
jammed
get free
a door.
You got free
congrats.
money.
Yeah.
So same idea. Mills a bunch of cards. It's good for a deck that doesn't mill very well, and this is kind of one of those decks. Mm-hmm. The other thing is at level 1, you have a green K that isn't really green. She's just gray because you can play her regardless without fulfilling color requirements. And then on Climax play, she's in 7K plus Climax, so 8K.
Right.
And then she has pay 1 sack to when one of your other characters is front attacked and you put it in your hand. So we can translate one of our free money into saving somebody that's already on the board.
And I hear there's a 2-slayer.
Yes. So the primary reason you want to run this build is for this 2-slayer. So it is the biggest 2-slayer base power that exists. So 12-5 base, as long as you have experience 1. I feel like somehow you'll be able to manage. And then, so 12-5 base, and we've got 1,000 power from Climax play, so 13-5, which means we're already over Alice's typical board. But let's say they have 2 brainstorms, right? So they're 14K, and they have the Mito backup, right? 14K. So that's their, like, absolute peak number. They can't be any bigger.
Right.
Well, we got Chica. Because
Good old Chica.
We're not running the Kaguya finisher, which means of our 2 choose 1, we're going to choose the Ricky. And so...
Turns out.
Yeah.
Still the best one.
Yeah. And so the Ricky just gives 2K. Just cuz.
Seems good.
So now we can reach impossibly high numbers. We're talking 14-5, 15-5 with Climax. So there's no way Alice can stop this. So you're going to get over.
Sheenie.
Now, the downside is they're going to pay 3. Probably.
Well,
so
at least they paid 3.
Right, but you're draining them, right? Every turn that you drain them, every time you force them to use resources, this applies to things that aren't just Alice, but all concepts in Weiss. You want to reverse your opponent because it always leads to good outcomes. 1, they're not direct attacking on the follow-up turn, which means they're hitting for 1 or 2 if they have a Climax, which is a lot better than 2 or 3.
Right.
2, you force them to use resources, even if they have Clock Encore, even if they have Hand Encore, even if they have Pay 3 Encore, Pay 2 Encore.
Make them use the Encore.
Right.
Just make them use it.
You're forcing them to use resources they want to save for later. Every time you drain them for 3, that's basically another opposition by shield that just became impossible to drop because they just won't have the money for that and their finisher.
Yeah, and I mean, making them pay the 3, kills their compression that they're getting as well. A lot of the kind of Alice advantage comes from, here, I'm going to jam this combo twice and then refresh the deck, and look at that. 9 stock. Jazz hands.
Yeah, and they're just going to get blocked down. So, Kaguya... So we got these pieces that we're going to work with at 1. We're gonna hit him with the 2-slayer. We're going to save our 2-slayer from getting killed on the follow-up turn, and then we're going to re-hit you with the 2-slayer again. So, very annoying, drains a lot of resources.
And I mean, even just by themselves, into just like level 1 cards, they'll swing.
Right, yeah.
Like, There's no issue with killing regular things. We're not like sacrificing the ability to kill vanilla combos with the ability to also kill Alice. This is a full package.
Yeah, and
Killing
so
everything.
we still got a 6.5 and a 7K. I mean, that'll get the job done against everybody. And this particular build is running four of the Student Council election event, which gives 2 characters 1,500 and salvages. So if you do manage to get rid of one of my guys, I'll put him right back and I'll give him 1,500 power and I will get over you again. At 2. Everybody who's ever faced Kaguya knows that 2 is the level where if they're ahead, if Kaguya is ahead, that's where they start to step on you. Because the Miyuki early play, the 3-2 green Miyuki early play, is one of the stickiest, most difficult board pieces in Weiss.
What if I was just big?
Yeah, huge character.
No backups too.
Right, 14k base, no backups, and clock kick if you have experience 4 or higher. Pay 2 and pitch 1. So if I have a whole bunch of extra resources, right? Because I can pay 2 more easily because I'm generating metric loads of money. So I can just keep paying. And so not only can I afford this guy, I can afford his clock kick too. So if I think that you have minus souls on the board, if I think you have some kind of advantage on the board, if you still have Alice's on the board, I can get rid of them forever. And there is very little you can do about it if I'm bigger than you. So...
And it turns out, without the ability to use backups, he will be bigger than you.
Yeah. And so, with few exceptions, this card will remove a problem. Whatever it is. For 4 stock, and really 3 net, since he's going to gain 1 on attack, he will remove something. Permanently. So, that's great. And then we're talking about the choice finisher. So this is from set 2. The upside to this finisher is it's cheap, which is good. Because
we love cheap.
We can invest more in the mid game. We can easily pay for more Miyukis, more student council elections, more brainstorms, more everything else. Because we've got this very cost-effective finisher on the backside that's going to just get it done at the end game. So on play, heal, and then on climax play, you have to discard a character and need a full board, so there's that. But honestly, you should have a full board if Miyuki's been patrolling it, shutting down pretty much everything your opponent's doing. Then we get 1 of 2 abilities. We either get on direct burn 3 or on front burn 2, and we get 1,000 power, or side burn 2. So
seems pretty good.
6 packets, easy as you like. Does cost 6 stock, which is pretty normal for triple. But honestly, you may not need triple. You know, if Miyuki's still around, you can still use him. If the other thing is we have an off finisher that we're running for experience purposes probably, but also because it's a decent off finisher. It's an experience 6 to get pay 2 and ditch 2 on attack to burn 2, and then it heals. Probably don't play it very often. Probably only play it in situations where you just don't have what you need to be able to use Chica, or you already did a Chica and maybe the game's still going.
I mean, is this list playing words?
It is not playing words.
Oh, okay.
So that's an interesting point, because most decks, I would say, after set 2 came out, are playing words.
Words of Parting.
Words of Parting.
An event that gives Musashi to a character. On cancel, mill the top card, burn level +1.
Yes, and also can't be chosen.
Oh, yeah. And so this one's definitely leaning more on just the cost effectiveness of everything. We're going to jam this Brainstormer, we're going to get crap loads of money, we're going to kill everything you have, and at the end game, Chica's going to get it done.
Yeah, and so by taking a more mid-game focused approach, you are better into Alice. And so the gamble that this build is taking, in contrast to other builds, and we'll talk about the Spain build briefly here in a second, but because, surprise, this deck won 2 tournaments. The risk you're taking here is you're leaning more into the mid-game, and you're hoping to build a significant lead so that you don't need that much damage on the backside, right? You can just win the game. By just them being level 3 and you just kind of pushing it over the finish line. The Spain build is a bit different. Generally focusing on the same idea where we want to control the mid game using a combination of level 2 Slayers, Ks to bounce them back to your hand, and Kageyas to produce tons of money. But the way this deck is translating it is somewhat different. We do see the Miyuki, Chica, Engine in the late game, but we have 3 Words of Parting, and we have 2 of the game where whoever reaches the limit loses. So this is the Kaguya Opposition by Shield anti-damage event. You need another event in hand to do it. But you pay 2, you pitch another event, and then you get cannot deal damage and 2k power.
And it turns out when you have a guy that bonds to Words of Parting, you can have an extra event to ditch.
Yeah, exactly. So we have the Words of Parting event Bonder. That event is there, for 2 reasons. One, if you're way ahead. I mean, if you're way ahead, then you can jam the door combo and then pay for everything that card has pretty much for free. You'll have to ditch 2, but it's basically like a free anti-damage. So if you're way ahead, you can stay way ahead. The other thing is that if your opponent's got a highly dangerous finisher, let's say Mikey from TRV.
Yeah.
Right? We don't want that.
Don't want that.
So we can shut that down. If there's a extremely dangerous card on the other side of the board, then we can say, no, that is not going to kill me. I am not going to lose the game to that. So,
or if it's even just, all right, I'm at 3-5 and they're swinging for 2.
Yeah.
How about you don't?
That's right. Sometimes you just don't lose. And that's a good enough reason to run something.
Absolutely.
So this deck's a little more event focused, a little more. We're trying to work around the explosiveness of the current meta, but congrats to both players. I think I've been running this deck in locals for a few weeks, and I think it's very reasonable. I definitely would want some quantity of student council elections and Words of Parting. I don't think I could go without both of, without one or without the other in either direction. But I like both of these lists. I think they're both very reasonable. So yeah, congrats.
And congrats to everybody that won or made top 8 or even just went. You had a great time. Congrats especially to the winning team of Rosemont for swimming to the top of 72 teams.
Yeah, I think that's the
most we've had all season.
It is the biggest event of the season, and the bigger an event. No, I'm sorry, San Gabriel was 76.
76. Wow.
So
still
yes.
Very close.
Yes.
A lot of teams, and they swam across all the Alices to make their way to victory.
Yeah, and they knew what the meta was going to look like, and they adjusted the best way they could. So yeah, I mean, this is a perfect example of the type of team that wins. You've got a good read on the meta. You can either lean in or you can lean away, and if you lean away, then you better understand what you're doing. And so, yeah, congrats, great job.
And from some kind of wars to another, it's time for Waifu Wars. Episode 1, The Redhead Menace. We're running a waifu tournament. We might run more. And in this one, we're gonna have some fun. I think the rule set is still a little in flux, but it's the same basic premise. I like a girl, or a guy. You do the same, and we're gonna put some decks together around that. However, there is one group of girls that we are not going to abide in in this around these parts. There's no redheads.
Yeah, so this set didn't exist back in the day when there were more waifu tournaments. It feels like this is a format that's kind of moved to the background a little bit, just because there, for whatever reason, maybe that's confirmation bias. I just haven't seen a lot of people running waifu tournaments, but we're gonna run one. We asked our local, DFW area players what alternative format they would like the most. And so 2 formats were vastly outvoting all the others. One was waifu, and the other one is Legacy pre-2017 Weiss.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about both those formats. But the nature of how Quince plays and how Quince is built does not make it very fun for a waifu event. Or if you're the Quints player, it's perhaps too fun because those decks are already kind of constructed around one character. And it doesn't feel like a restriction to construct it around one character. So, in order to avoid everyone playing Nino and Itsuki, and possibly Yotsuba, if one of our locals is to be believed, then we're just gonna ban it. That might seem unreasonable, but it isn't. It isn't unreasonable. Because everyone else will have to make very hard decisions about what cards to keep and what cards to cut. Because you can't have all of your utility cards that you're used to having. Except for them. They get to have everything they want. Well, I say no to that.
All right.
So,
that's fair enough.
No. No Quints.
No Quints. However, you got all the other sets.
And there's so many.
And there's so many decks to build. And so I think general rule set that may be mildly expanded upon, and we can touch on that, is it's a waifu deck.
Yeah.
You gotta have the waifu / husbando on it.
Yeah.
In the name, on the picture, in the card, in the spirit of things. You get 4 slots to mess around with that are not waifu. Just so that you have a little room to work with.
Yeah, and I think that that's the general rule set that most people have gone by. Because you do some sets, especially a little older sets, some sets, the waifu character you have may not have any functional brainstorm. Or may not have any functional high value level 3 or utility card, or something like this where the deck will be significantly worse without it. Or
right.
let's take an example. I was looking at Joker Husbando deck for P5. And I kind of slung the list to you.
I saw it. It was there.
And so Joker has
a list.
Joker has a advantage combo.
Yeah, he does.
And Joker has a level 3. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and a brainstorm.
And a lot of pretty okay parts in the middle. And then we have, of course, Calling Card, which is a Joker card. Right? I think we can all agree that Calling Card is a Joker card. Joker delivers the Calling Card.
Yeah.
In any case, though, if you've played P5 or if you played P5 in the past, one of the most notable things about it is how often you need calling cards and how bad it is when you don't have them. Because calling card is your only milling tool outside of brainstorming. And it also happens to be the bonder for calling card is not a Joker. It's a Ryuji. So, if you want to have calling cards ever, you're going to have to run this bonder. Because he also happens to be pretty much your only hand fix.
Yeah, that's true.
So, this card isn't really optional. You can't just be like, we'll just not run it. Because the deck will be significantly worse. Yeah. So, that's a perfect example. We got to run this Ryuji. Why? Because the deck will be much worse without it. So, that's why we leave those extra slots. So that you can slot in that card that you feel that without it, the deck will be much worse. So, that's my general opinion on it. If you're interested in running your own waifu tournament and you want to use the rules that we're going to come up with, I will have the rules posted in the YouTube for this episode.
Or the Spotify description.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure it syndicates across like all the podcast websites.
Yeah, it'll be posted in the description.
I'm calling you out. I don't know what this platform is. Overcast? Have you ever heard of this?
No.
I don't know who that is. I'm calling you out. Thanks for listening. I don't even. I don't know what this is. I was looking through our stats the other day. I was just like, okay, that makes sense. Like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spotify for podcasters. I mean, sure. And then Overcast, and I was like, how many podcast platforms do we need?
I mean, yeah, back in the day there was like iHeartRadio podcast, and
that's fair.
I'm
calling you out. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Tell me what Overcast is. I have no idea. Like, what?
If there's a way for you to communicate that to us,
yeah,
we're happy for all of our listeners, no matter what you're listening to us on. We appreciate you.
We appreciate you. I was just very surprised to see like more podcast platforms. But back to Waifu Wars.
So what are you playing for? What's the plan here?
What's the plan here? So, I work in computer science. You might even describe my current job as some version of a corporate software engineer. And so I relate very hard to that trait in Kobayashi. And while Kobayashi herself doesn't have enough cards by herself to make a Kobayashi waifu deck, my waifu from Kobayashi is Elma. And she also picks up a job as a corporate software engineer. And so that's my gal right there. And I've got a 1 and a 3 combo. It's just that easy.
Yeah.
Who needs a brainstormer?
I think for those of us that have been playing Weiss for a very, very long time, Brainstorm was not always a part of the game.
Yep.
And for a very long time, not every set had one. It was a set-specific mechanic.
And you know what? I've got Brainstorm at home. It's okay.
I mean, there's definitely...
And I have a climax support. If I trigger either of my waifu's climaxes, I can discard a climax to salvage. Now, one of them is pants. Great. The other one is book. And you might say, well, Ben, that's useless. How many times are you going to draw a climax off of book? And let me tell you, more than enough!
Yeah, I think anyone who played the vintage SAO bar book build will tell you, you'd be surprised what you draw.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how many times book is bar.
And how many times bar is book.
Or bar.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
It happens all the time. And so what else we got? There's a lot of trial deck cards in my waifu deck.
That's a good sign of a strong deck usually.
And there's not that many Elma cards, but the one on screen right now, if you're watching on YouTube, or if you go into the deck list and you're listening on audio and you have the time to go take a look, it's very clearly labeled in the description. You will see it. But this card is my favorite card ever.
Unlimited Appetite.
No.
Oh.
Yeah. You thought that? No. For the art alone. First time using a computer Elma. Because that's my face every single day when I look at some god-awful code base. And I'm just like, huh. It's this one, Steve.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And so
I even like the flavor text.
Yeah. What is it? What's this box for?
Yeah, I often wonder what the box is for.
So that's my favorite card, I think, almost ever, like art-wise and Weiss, just for like the pure relatedness. And so my non-waifu card in the deck is Kobayashi, that bonds to it and buffs it and turns it into a 1500 field counter. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, that's reasonable.
Yeah. So my vanilla's now a 6k 1500 field counter. I like that enough. The big event though is Unlimited Appetite, which I would play in my normal like max rare Elma deck with utility.
Yeah.
Unlimited Appetite is an event that you can play 8 copies of, and it's a console. It checks the top, adds itself or a character to hand, and then discards one. Or not discards one, it discards itself, right? And so, what you can do with it is that whatever you have the 1/1 called Wavering Beliefs Elma, or your finisher, Go-Go Trogon's Elma, you can marker this event underneath one of them instead of discarding it to the waiting room. And it gives both of those cards power. The finisher immensely more so, but you get power. And you can set up your brainstorm at home. Because you keep ripping cards off the top of your deck, you find a climax, and then you play Love's Sweets Elma, which mills 2 cards off the top, and if you see a climax, you can pay 1 and check 4 for any character or the event itself.
I mean, I've heard of worse things.
Yeah.
I think a key component of the waifu event is to understand that it is highly likely that some characters will be very clunky. Or possibly, if the set isn't big enough, or if the character is more niche, it may not even be possible in the first place. But I think approaching it with the right mentality is your key to enjoying the event. Yes, it is highly likely that you are going to have to play cards that you do not want to play, and you certainly don't want to play 4 of. But maybe your set is like Kobayashi and only has 1 set of cards. So you have to pretty much play anything with that character's name on it.
Oh yeah. No, you should see my Naruto waifu list.
Yeah. The upshot there is that P4 is a bit bigger. So you can say no to some of the most unplayable parts.
No. Naruto by herself. There is not. There is just barely enough cards for a 50 stack.
Really?
Yeah. You can cut like 8 cards total.
Huh. I guess, yeah, in the Vert E, they're missing some cards.
Yeah, I'm talking about with JP. I don't even think you could do it with version E by itself.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I'm just not remembering how few Naruto cards got printed.
Oh no, dude. You know, and also it's like one of the combos, like Sailor Uniform, only searches for protagonists.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
I definitely have played that combo unironically at a point. There was a point in time where that was good.
I mean, I'm sure you got to get protagonist.
Any advantage was good advantage at some point. But yeah, I think one of the things about Persona in particular is that a lot of the characters are tandemed, and so it's like, well, some of these cards just ain't gonna work right because I don't have the other guy.
Yeah. Although I will say one of the funny parts about this Elma list in particular, and even just like even as Kobayashi as a whole, it's like a card that I always think about. I'm like, you know, maybe if I made my board right, maybe this would be really good. And it's at Loggerheads, Toru, and Elma. Because if all of your characters are just Toru and Elma, which for the most part, which excludes every Brainstormer, by the way.
Great.
No Brainstormer can be on the board if you want this power buff. But on the turn it's played, if you reverse something, you can pay 1 and salvage a Toru or Elma.
Which is very good in the terms of like resource generation. 1 stock is worth a lot less than a card in hand. So it's hype. It's a pretty straightforward plus. But normally, you're like, I can't play my Kobayashi Brainstorm. Even in this deck, you couldn't have, like, the Bonder on field. However, in a deck that's not running a Brainstorm, or even just doesn't have one on the field, and you just have Toru or Elma, I mean, it's a plus. Yeah, I think you just take whatever you can get when you're building in a more restrictive way. you just have to you have to read more cards, right? You're gonna have to dig a little deeper into the stack and see what you think.
Oh yeah, one last thing on my end before we see your list, Steve. I'm calling you out, Bushiroad. You can't put 8 foil unlimited appetite events in deck log, and that's cringe. I have 16 of them because I'm building 2 different decks with them. And you know what? You should just let me put in 8 gold copies. The card says you can run 8 of them. I don't understand.
Yeah.
You fixed it for all the army cards. Let me have this.
Yeah. Somebody can just tweet that to Bushiroad. I'm sure they'll get on it.
I already did it.
Okay.
I just tweeted it.
They'll fix that in the next business month.
Yeah. But now, Steve, who's your waifu that you're bringing?
I haven't fully locked it in yet. I've put together several builds. Some better than others. One of the more disappointing things about waifu is that the SAO waifus are particularly difficult to put together because keyword problems, especially after anniversary, even more keyword problems, make it really hard to get something cohesive. It feels like you're always just giving something away. And the even more important thing is that Asuna has no good advantage engines, ever. The only good one is from anniversary, and then its power condition needs anniversary characters. So that doesn't work great in a waifu environment. We're still tinkering. We may be willing to get a little wild, a little unorthodox. But
until then,
so the next character I went to, I'm gonna try and find a way to do Asuna. That's probably my favorite character in anime.
Right.
But after that, I decided to go for the next most popular character in my brain, which is Kaguya. So, the upside of playing Kaguya is, thank God, they printed a combo that is not total garbage in set 2. So...
yeah, I hear you've got this torch.
Yeah, and assuming no one manages to put together an Alice waifu deck, if they do, you just scoop, no problem. But assuming you don't have to deal with that, the Kaguya level 1 game is very reasonable.
I remember there being an Alice finisher, dude. I don't know about that.
Yeah, we'll just have to hope they can never figure out how to get it on board. Like, if the 2-1 just never comes on the board, then maybe you're okay.
Okay, Steve.
But, so you've got a pretty okay level 1 game. Not the best level 0 game, but at the very least, you have a Brainstorm, a Stock Swap, and a Climax Swap. Your non-waifu card is kind of chosen for you because,
her name is Ai.
You can't run...
she bestows courage.
Yeah, Kaguya doesn't really work without Ai, and, I thought about building the event deck for a hot minute, but that deck really doesn't work without some of the bonders and stuff. Like, it becomes very clunky very fast. So I was like, we'll save that ambitious opportunity for later. What do you lose? You basically lose most of your level 0 pluses. Your level 3 game outside of when you're level 3 and trying to win the game, all the other level 3s very scuffed. You don't have an early play healer. You barely have any early plays at all. So
hey, I mean, you have Marine at home.
Yeah, I definitely wasted one of my slots on the Eye early play healer because I was like, at least this thing can heal, maybe, if I can somehow put it in my hand. But other than that, leaning heavy on resource building. So building resources with the top stock on reverse 1-0, and then building resources with Incident of the Century, which is an event that decks would run more often if they didn't have all the other good cards that they could run. It gives you Twin Drive, and then it gives you money from the waiting room at the end of the turn. It's a pretty reasonable card, but again, it's outclassed by other events that you definitely can't run because you don't have yellow. So without yellow, you can't run any of the Words of Parting, anything like that. I suppose, and you can't use there's nowhere else to use your slots. So your non-waifu slots are taken immediately. So, that's part of trying to run good combos is when they're tandemed with other cards that are not waifu, you're stuck with those tandems. So, that's what we got, right? We got a pretty good deck that has obvious big giant holes. Your 2 game is not very good. Your 3 game is only good at 3. And your 1 game is really, really dependent on everybody being smaller than 8K.
All I'm saying, man, I'll see you with my bread event.
Yeah,
I'll see you there.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like you'll get some very unique outcomes in these type of events, which is kind of the reason you do them in the first place. You're like, okay, well, this stuff normally wouldn't work in the meta, but like if I know my opponent's playing a bunch of weird scuffed stuff, I mean, maybe it'll work.
Maybe
Who knows?
It'll work.
So
who knows? Yeah, I mean, all I'm saying is, Elma with 8 events on all of the finishers on board is a nice little 18K.
yeah, I'm sure I'll be able to reverse that. Any minute now. I'll have the power to reverse that.
Any minute now. And so we'll report back after our event wraps up, and we can do a follow-up on how that event goes.
I'm definitely excited to talk about pre-2017 Weiss, also known, if you're Weiss boomer like me, before the dark times, before the gear. When they didn't have the gear and the deck was normal. It was a normal deck, and then they put in the gear, and then we all suffered for 2 years.
Well, I'm actually kind of mad that they printed Batman after that, because that's definitely like an old Weiss feeling deck.
Yeah.
That was just printed in 2018. And we're just like, come on, man.
Unlucky.
But yeah, we'll talk about what a pre-17 Weiss looks like. We could probably run it next month, maybe. Like
Yeah. I mean, we'll space it out a little bit, but yeah, better to get them out of the way and figure
before regional season.
Yeah, exactly.
God
so
knows.
we'll get them all in. You know what? I'm gonna push for Popper as well. I'm gonna push hard. So
I'm down for Popper.
Yeah, hopefully
we just gotta pick a day that people are willing to play it.
Yeah, hopefully I can convince some people that I'm right, but I think no.
Hey, I'm fine with Popper. You see this Elba combo? You see how like all of the rarities are rare and below?
Really?
All of them are foil, so you can't tell in this deck list.
Got it.
But I know my level 1 combo is like an what is it? My 1 combo is an uncommon, and I'm 90% sure that my 3 combos are rare. So I'm gonna double check it, but like,
yeah, I think that's a format that's very exciting for me because it does promote creative deck building, which is a highly underrated skill.
It's a rare. I get to play Elmo Waifu and the Popper.
Yeah, and you might get a few more utility cards. Who knows?
Yeah.
You have to dig deep. Like the dwarves in the mines of Moria. You gotta dig deep to see what hidden gems are in there that are overshadowed by a much better double R.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's our show for today. So tune in next time after your next deck out, and don't you forget to take the refresh point.